So let's just come down here and see what Becky Hammon says about this awkwardness, okay, between Caitlin Clark and A'ja Wilson. Hammon also witnessed the league's massive growth spike since 2024, which is largely attributed to Caitlin Clark's arrival in the WNBA. CNBC's Alex Sherman interviewed the iconic coach on November 12th. At one point,
it's A'ja Wilson's own coach, and she just said the quiet part out loud. When CNBC's Alex Sherman sat down with Becky Hammon on November 12th, he asked the question everyone's been dancing around. Does it create an awkward dynamic when the general public thinks Caitlin Clark is the face of the league, but everyone inside the WNBA knows A'ja Wilson is the best player on the planet? Hammon's answer was diplomatic for about 30 seconds. She praised A'ja's hardware, her dominance, her 6'4" frame that makes her unstoppable in the paint. But then came the sentence that A'ja Wilson fans absolutely did not want to hear. But Caitlin Clark is bringing in the fanfare. Not they both bring fan. Not the league benefits from multiple stars. Caitlin Clark is bringing in the fanfare. Present tense, singular credit. And coming from the coach who's supposed to be selling A'ja Wilson as the undisputed face of the league. That's a massive admission.
Does that lead to sort of a awkward dynamic at all? Question mark. Should be noted, I mean, there are a lot of foul calls that does send A'ja Wilson to the line. I'm just gonna, to the point that other fandoms literally call it her special whistle. I mean, when she plays, special whistle literally trends online.
Here's what makes that statement so significant. Becky Hammon isn't some talking head on ESPN trying to generate clicks. She's the head coach of the Las Vegas Aces, A'ja Wilson's coach, the person whose job literally depends on keeping her superstar happy and motivated. She has every incentive to protect A'ja's status as the league's premier player. And yet, when directly asked about the Caitlin Clark versus A'ja Wilson dynamic, she couldn't avoid stating the obvious truth. The numbers back up what Hammon said. When Indiana played Las Vegas during the 2024 season, viewership spiked specifically for Fever games. A'ja Wilson has been dominating the league for years, winning MVP awards and championships. But the massive growth spike that everyone keeps talking about, that didn't happen until Caitlin Clark entered the league.
I kid you not. Quote, I don't think so, Hammon responded. I think people want to make more of it than what it is. Let the numbers do the talking. The winning do the talking. Caitlin had a tough year. Obviously, with injuries this year, she's going to be a tremendous player in the league. No doubt about that. A'ja Wilson is the best player on the planet, and she's got the hardware and the numbers and everything to back it up. But Caitlin Clark is bringing in the fanfare. I mean, she's one of the most exciting players to ever seen on the collegiate level. And I would assume a healthy year for her. She's going to be a great pro for a long time.
Now watch Hammon try to soften the blow. She mentions Caitlin had a tough year with injuries, calls her one of the most exciting players ever seen at the collegiate level, predicts she'll be great for a long time. All true statements. But notice what she does next. She immediately pivots back to A'ja being the most dominant player in the league by far, emphasizing the hardware and the numbers. That's a coach trying to have it both ways. Acknowledge reality without completely undermining her own player. The problem is, you can't split this particular baby. Either A'ja Wilson is the face of the league, or Caitlin Clark is. And Becky Hammon just told us which one actually moves the needle with fans. This matters because we're not just talking about individual egos here. We're talking about money, massive amounts of money. The WNBA is in the middle of negotiating media rights deals. Expansion franchises are being sold for record amounts, and player salaries are finally starting to reflect the league's growth. But that growth isn't evenly distributed. It's concentrated around one player, and everyone knows it.
At this stage of her career, A'ja Wilson is a dream of every franchise in the league. Jason Kelsey's wife, Kylie Kelsey, has made an early pitch to the Las Vegas Aces superstar to bring her to Philadelphia. Does it say when this league is coming, or this team is coming? Oh my God, 2030. Would she still be playing in the league in 2030? That's 4 more. Yeah, probably at the back end of her career, I guess. As part of the WNBA's expansion, Philadelphia will have its WNBA team in 2030.
Speaking of money and expansion, Let's talk about Philadelphia. The city is getting a WNBA team in 2030, owned by Josh Harris through Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment. Harris also owns the Philadelphia 76ers and the Washington Commanders. Comcast holds a minority stake. This is serious money coming into the league. And Kylie Kelsey, wife of former Eagles center Jason Kelsey, is already recruiting. She had Aja Wilson on her podcast and made her pitch outstanding food scene, unmatched fan passion, a city that rides or dies for its players. She's not wrong about Philadelphia fans. They're intense, loyal, and absolutely brutal when you underperform. But here's the awkward part of this recruitment pitch. By 2030, Aja Wilson will be on the back end of her career. She'll be in her early 30s. Still productive probably, but not the dominant force she is right now. And the Aces are owned by Mark Davis, an NFL owner, with Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, also holding an ownership stake. That's a pretty compelling situation to walk away from.
However, it didn't deter the wife of former Philadelphia Eagles center from making an early pitch to the best player in the world, and it was compelling. Quote, "I can set the scene for you," Kelsey said. "Our food scene, outstanding. I will tell you, the passion from fans in Philadelphia, oh yeah, unmatched. I will say on the receiving end, from visiting teams, negative feedback from people who joined us, 10 out of 10. Big fans. They're big fans of our fans. We pour it all into it. We really love the people who ride for us."
The expansion draft dynamics are fascinating here. When Philadelphia enters the league in 2030, existing teams will have to leave players unprotected. The question becomes, will Las Vegas still consider Aja Wilson untouchable by then? Or will they protect younger pieces and let a 32-year-old, high-salary veteran get selected? That might sound insane to Aces fans right now. Aja Wilson is their franchise. But this is professional sports. Teams make cold-blooded decisions about aging stars all the time. And if Caitlin Clark is still bringing in the fanfare while Aja's production is declining, the business calculus changes dramatically. Philadelphia fans need to understand what they're signing up for. This isn't Indiana, where the fan base was so grateful to have Caitlin Clark that they tolerated a coaching staff that clearly wasn't ready for prime time. Philadelphia will demand excellence immediately. They booed Santa Claus. They threw batteries at opposing players. They ran Donovan McNabb out of town, despite him being one of the best quarterbacks in franchise history. If Aja Wilson shows up at 32 years old and doesn't deliver a championship immediately, Philadelphia fans will let her know about it. Loudly, constantly. That's the kosher Kylie Kelsey is selling as passion. It's real, but it cuts both ways.
According to reports released by the league, the team will be based in South Philadelphia. Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment has the ownership of the team, with Comcast holding a minority stake. And by the way, in case you're wondering if you think that sounds familiar, that's Josh Harris, the owner of the Washington Redskins, who also owns the Philadelphia 76ers, by the way, an NFL owner. I suspect that's going to be a pretty badass market, actually. Look, I don't want to act like she's wrong about something.
Let's get back to the core issue, the awkward dynamic between perception and reality. Aja Wilson has the MVP awards. She has the championship rings. She has the scoring records. By every objective basketball measurement, she's the best player in the WNBA right now. Nobody disputes that. But Caitlin Clark has something Aja doesn't. The ability to make casual fans care. She brings people who've never watched women's basketball into the arena and keeps them watching. That's not a skill you can teach or replicate. It's star power, charisma, whatever you want to call it. And it's worth more than any statistical category. The WNBA has had dominant players before. Lisa Leslie, Candace Parker, Diana Taurasi, all legends, all deserving of their status. But none of them generated the kind of mainstream attention that Caitlin Clark generated before she even played a professional game. Iowa's women's basketball games were outdrawing men's games. That's unprecedented.
Philadelphia Eagles fans, and yeah, Philadelphia fans in general, very passionate. We know at times can get salty. All right, can get kind of salty. looking right at you, CDS Sports Podcast. Let's Go Philly. Let's Go Philly podcast is his football channel. He covers a lot of Philadelphia sports on there. Very salty group of fans, but yeah, they ride and die for their players. I mean, every player that ever plays for the Eagles is the greatest player of all time at that position.
Becky Hammon tried to frame this as people want to make more of it than what it is. But that's coach speak for yes, there's tension here. But I'm not about to pour gasoline on it during a media interview. She's too smart for that. She's been around professional basketball her entire adult life. First as a player, then as an assistant coach with the Spurs under Greg Popovich, now as a championship-winning head coach in the WNBA. She knows exactly how these dynamics work. When one player generates significantly more attention and revenue than another, it creates natural friction, not necessarily personal animosity, but structural tension around endorsements, media coverage, salary negotiations, and legacy discussion. A'ja Wilson handles this tension better than most players would. She's been professional about it publicly, focused on her game, let her performance speak for itself. But she's also human. And watching your own coach tell a national business network that someone else is bringing in the fanfare has to sting. Even if you understand the business reality behind the statement, here's the uncomfortable truth that the WNBA is going to have to confront over the next few years. The league's recent growth isn't because of some general rising tide that lifts all boats. It's specifically because of Caitlin Clark. The ratings prove it. The attendance numbers prove it. The merchandise sales prove it. And now A'ja Wilson's own coach just confirmed it on national television. That doesn't diminish A'ja's accomplishments. She's still the best player in the league by any objective measure. But best player and most valuable to the league's growth are two different categories. And right now, Caitlin Clark owns the second category completely. The WNBA has dealt with star power imbalances before. But this one is different because of the timing. The league is negotiating new media deals worth potentially billions of dollars. Expansion teams are being sold for record amounts. Players' salaries are finally approaching respectable levels compared to international leagues. All of this is happening because the WNBA finally has mainstream attention. And that mainstream attention is concentrated around one player. Not evenly distributed across the league stars. Not spread out among multiple franchises. It's Caitlin Clark, and then everyone else. That creates a massive problem when it comes to negotiating collective bargaining agreements, revenue sharing, and marketing strategies. Think about what happens when the players' union sits down with the league to negotiate the next CBA. How do you structure a deal that fairly compensates the player who's generating most of the new revenue without completely blowing up the salary structure? Do you create a supermax exception specifically for Caitlin Clark? Do you implement revenue sharing that acknowledges some players draw more fans than others? These aren't hypothetical questions. They're going to come up in real negotiations, probably within the next 2 years. And the answers will determine whether the WNBA can sustain this growth or whether it fragments into a two-tier league where one franchise gets all the attention and everyone else fights for scraps. Becky Hammon's comment about Caitlin bringing in the fanfare wasn't just an observation. It was an acknowledgement of a fundamental reality that the league can't ignore anymore. You can have the best player in the world, with all the hardware and statistics to prove it, and still not be the most important player to the league's business model. That's not fair to A'ja Wilson. She's done everything right. She's dominated on the court, stayed professional off it, represented the league well in every public appearance. But fairness doesn't matter in entertainment businesses. What matters is who puts people in seats and keeps them watching on television. The Philadelphia expansion situation crystallizes this dynamic perfectly. In 2030, when that franchise starts play, they could theoretically pursue A'ja Wilson if she's available. But will they look at the numbers and decide they need to build around a player who generates Caitlin Clark-level attention? Because by then the league will have 6 more years of data showing exactly which players move the revenue needle. Philadelphia fans are passionate, but they're also sophisticated about sports business. They understand market dynamics. They know that having a great player isn't enough if that player doesn't sell tickets and jerseys. They watched the 76ers build around Joel Embiid for years. And despite his MVP awards and dominant statistics, the team hasn't won a championship. At some point, being the best player on paper isn't enough. The Aces are in an interesting position with this dynamic. They've built a championship culture. They have strong ownership with Mark Davis and Tom Brady involved. And they play in a market that's proven it will support winners. But Las Vegas is also a market that's completely driven by entertainment value. Residents and tourists both want to be entertained, not just watch technically excellent basketball. If the Aces continue winning championships with Aja Wilson as their centerpiece, they'll be fine. But if they hit a rough patch, if injuries derail a season, if they lose in the playoffs to a Caitlin Clark-led team, the narrative shifts dramatically. Suddenly it's not about who's the better player, it's about who delivers when it matters most. Becky Hammon understands all of this. That's why her answer to the CNBC question was so carefully calibrated. She gave Aja Wilson all the credit she deserves for her on-court dominance. But she also acknowledged the business reality that Caitlin Clark is the one bringing new fans into the league. Both things can be true simultaneously, even if they create an awkward dynamic. The question is whether the WNBA can manage this dynamic without it becoming destructive. Can they elevate Caitlin Clark as the face of the league, while still properly recognizing Aja Wilson's accomplishment? Can they structure their business model to reward both on-court excellence and fan engagement? Can they avoid the trap of becoming a one-player league where everyone else feels like a supporting character? Those are the challenges facing the WNBA as it enters this new era of growth and mainstream attention. And Becky Hammon's comment, as diplomatic as she tried to make it, just highlighted how delicate this balance really is. When Aja Wilson's own coach has to admit that someone else is bringing in the fanfare, that tells you everything about where the league's priorities actually lie, regardless of what the official messaging says. So where does this leave us? With a league that's finally getting the attention it deserves, but that attention is concentrated around one player in a way that creates structural challenges. With the best player in the league watching someone else get credit for the league's growth. With coaches trying to manage egos and expectations while being honest about business realities. And with fans arguing endlessly about whether on-court excellence or fan engagement matters more. The answer, of course, is that both matter. But if you're building a sustainable business, if you're negotiating billion-dollar media deals, if you're trying to convince casual fans to become regular viewers, fan engagement wins every time. Becky Hammon knows it. The league office knows, and despite what anyone says publicly, Aja Wilson knows it too. That's what makes this dynamic so awkward and so fascinating to watch unfold.